Hello dear students, welcome back. Today we will be studying modals. Actually, you remember this grammar topic from also B1 and A2, but we will go in more depth with more examples and some more extra details. Okay, let's start with modals 1. As you may remember, we use modals 1, modals that represent this type, expresses things, actions that happens to, belongs to present. What were they? We use the bare form of our modals and then again, bare infinitive form of our verb. So it doesn't matter what subject we're using in our sentence, we always use our modal in its own form and then bare infinitive, which we can say also verb 1. And what are the modals that we're going to examine in modals 1? Are the ones that give the meaning of, for example, advice, obligation, prohibition, ability, possibility, permissions, and etc. There are a couple more. So what do we use? What modals do we use to give advice, to advise someone? We use should or ought to or had better. These are the positive ones, the affirmative ones when we are advising someone. So let's start with advice modals. The most common and the most used one, as you can guess, is should. But you can also use ought to instead of should to give the same meaning. It has quite completely the same meaning. The use is the same and they both represent actually a low advice, rather a low advice, for example, than had better. I can say you should eat healthy food to maintain your healthy lifestyle. This is my opinion, this is my advice to you. It doesn't have like a backup or a proof, but in my opinion, you should do blah blah blah. Or I could rewrite or use the same sentence using ought to. I could also say ought to instead of should. It wouldn't change anything, the grammar structure, sentence structure, or the meaning. They both represent the same thing. Or I can say she should start working out. I think she will look and feel better. This is, again, my opinion. I'm expressing my opinion. She should start working out. I think she will look and feel better. This is an example of modals don't change depending on the subject of the sentence. And also, after all of our models, I'm talking about models 1, we use bare infinitive form of our verb. We should, or I can just give advice or express something we should do about myself, about ourselves. We should leave now, or we will be late. It doesn't have to be someone that is not me. It can also used to, again, as I said, to express advice to ourselves or myself. Or I can say, I should study way harder to get into the university I want. For example, in this one, I am giving myself an advice. I know something that I should do to achieve my goal. What about shouldn't? Again, this model expresses advice in present, but we're telling someone that we think that they shouldn't do. Negative advice in present. For example, you shouldn't smoke. It is bad for you. In this one, you can see that I, again, am expressing my own opinion. She shouldn't treat you like that. I don't think you should let her. So we have two models and we have two sentences here. She shouldn't treat you like that. I don't think you should let her. As you can see, actually the meaning here is negative, but you see that should is positive. So how would I rewrite this sentence using shouldn't? I would delete the negative don't from beginning of the sentence, and I would just write I think you shouldn't, and I would add the negativity to the model. Okay, let's give examples using ought to. As we said, it has the same meaning and same use with should. Again, we use it in the present. You ought to apologize your headmaster for being late. As you can see, our model, it comes right after the subject, and it is in between our bare infinitive verb 1 and the subject. She ought to eat something. She hasn't eaten anything since yesterday. Again, it is the same meaning. Let's look at the negative version of ought to, which is ought not to. And this one is equal with shouldn't. We ought not to call her because she is working right now. So, in this one, I could also write shouldn't instead of ought not to, and it will still give the same meaning. After that, I use bare infinitive form of our verb. And as you can see, it comes right after the subject of the sentence. Okay, so we have one last model that expresses advice, which is had better. Had better is not equal with should and ought to. It is a kind of stronger advice. It represents a stronger advice than should and ought to. One more thing, it also may be used as to express a threat. Even though had better looks like it belongs to the past, this actually is in present tense. So these three things are very important. Had better belongs to present tense, and it represents a stronger advice than should and ought to. So we can say that this is the strongest advice model. And it is also can be used as to express a mild threat. Let's give examples. You had better see a doctor. Your eye is getting worse and worse. For example, this actually had better in the sentence highlights the importance of the advice. If I used should in the sentence, it would have the meaning of a way more mild advice. But this one expresses the importance of the situation. So also, example of a threat. You had better lower your voice at her. This is something that you can understand from the meaning, if it's a strong advice or a threat. You had better lower your voice at her, or I will have to call the manager. This is you do the thing and I will do the thing situation. So you can see a threat in that example. She had better arrive on time or else she won't be able to attend the meeting. By the way, if you have noticed, when we are combining two sentences, when we're using models 1, in the second sentence, the sentence that we combined with gets the future simple as the tense of the sentence. Because I don't know if you remember, but in B1 we have talked about the time harmony, tense harmony. So, what was tense harmony? A quick note, and then we will continue with the models. Tense harmony is actually simply when we have a time conjunction in the sentence. And if we have two combined sentences. For example, let's say, when I go home, she will be there. What is the time conjunction we have in the sentence is when. It represents time. And as you can see, I actually have two full sentences. How can I understand that if there is two full sentences, main clauses in the sentence that we have? I'm going to look. There's a comma, first of all, and I will go in detail with every one of them. This is the subject of the first sentence. This is the verb of the first sentence. Object of the first sentence. We don't necessarily need an object. A subject and a verb is more than enough for us to have a sentence. And let's look at after the comma. You can see she, subject of the second sentence. This is our tense, our auxiliary verb, and you can see the verb of our second sentence. So I now know that I have a combined sentence built with a time conjunction. What I'm gonna do is to use similar or close tenses to give a meaningful sentence. Our rule was we have to use, let me do it in another page, we use presents with presents when we have a time conjunction and combined sentences. We use present with present. What it means, present tense is actually pretty wide, and past with past. What are presents? As we have studied it before, present simple, present progressive, future simple, be going to in the future, present perfect, present perfect progressive. So actually all future tenses, for example, future perfect progressive, and if I have a time conjunction in a sentence and I'm combining, again, as I say, I have to use present tense with a present tense, which means I cannot use a present simple with a, for example, past perfect in a sentence like this. It can have when, it can have while, before, after, by the time. We cannot use them together. And what are the past tenses? Past simple, past progressive, past perfect, past perfect progressive. By the way, you can have be going to, but we can use as was were going to, which we call feature of the past. Or I can have the past of will and can, for example, would, could, or models to, since we're talking about models. So this is a very key point if you're preparing for an English exam, or if you're truly B2 or C1, you need this to build meaningful sentences. Again, when I go home, you can see the present simple and the feature here, so they are in a time harmony. Or when you look at here, you had better lower your voice at her, or I will have to call the manager. You can see the present tense here. How do I understand that this is the present tense? Had better belongs to present. Even though it looks like past, no, it represents strong advice or threat, belongs to today. And in the second sentence, you can see the future simple. She had better arrive on time. Again, I can see my present. Here, this is future simple, which refers to the present tense family. She won't be able to attend the meeting is also future simple here, which again belongs to the present tense family. Okay, if we are done and understand this tense harmony, I will keep going with had better not. Had better not is a negative form of had better. Again, I can give strong advice or a mild threat. For example, my colleague tells me, you had better not miss your exam. What do we have here? When you look at the meaning, you can see that this is a strong advice. But in this one, it represents the meaning of threat. Or I could keep going with my sentence, or I will, for example, shout at him. You can clearly see that this represents a threat. They had better send us the invitations, or else I won't speak to them again. You can see that, you can understand the threats this sentence has. in this one, again, we can understand a strong advice. She had better not be late for her university exam. Okay, let's look at models that represent advice from the beginning. Let's review, and then we will do the obligation ones. We talked about should. It's a weak advice, and it has the same meaning with ought to. You should eat healthy food to maintain your healthy lifestyle, which also I could use ought to instead of should. Then we have given more examples. She should start working out. I think she will look and feel better. As you can see, I tell my own opinion about her, what I think the best for her. And we have talked about this. Doesn't matter which subject we use in the sentence, always the modal verb comes right after the subject and then bare infinitive. We should leave now or we will be late. I should study way harder to get into the university I want. And then we have talked about negative advice, shouldn't. Also, it's equal with ought not to. You shouldn't smoke. It is bad for you. She shouldn't treat you like that. I don't think you should let her. Okay, in the second one, if you look at the second part, we don't have a negative modal here. But what we have is a negative meaning. I could also give the same meaning if I wrote this sentence like this. I think you shouldn't let her. I omitted the negativity from here and I added to my modal verb, so it has the same meaning. Okay, then we talked about ought to, which has the same meaning as should. You ought to apologize your headmaster for being late. Again, all of our models have the same structure, the same place in our sentence. She ought to eat something. She hasn't eaten anything since yesterday. I could also replace ought to with should in these sentences. Then we have ought not to, which is the same as shouldn't. We ought not to call her because she's working right now. This is something that we shouldn't do. I could also replace ought not to with shouldn't. You can see our subject, modal verb, and bare infinitive. Then we have talked about had better, which is different than should and had better. This one is the strongest advice. It represents a stronger advice than should and ought to. And there is one more use of it. It can also be used as to express a kind of threat. You had better see a doctor, your eye is getting worse and worse. And the grammatic structure is the same. Since it's the same, you have to understand it from the meaning. In this one, you can understand that this is an advice. I have a proof, and this is something that has to be done. A threat example, you had better lower your voice at her or I will have to call the manager. You can come across to or else with had better if it's used with the meaning of a threat a lot. but you don't necessarily need it to give that meaning. So we can understand that this is a perfect example for threats. She had better arrive on time or else she won't be able to attend the meeting. Again, this is a strong advice. Sorry, this is a threat. And then, apart from modals, we have talked about the tense harmony, which is pretty important both with modals and all the other grammar topics that we have studied so far. If there's a time conjunction, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a time conjunction, it can also be another conjunction. And if we have two combined sentences, we have to use similar tenses in those sentences. Presents with presents, pasts with pasts. Feature family belongs to the present side, and all the other starting with past or that has the past meaning belongs to the past family. Then we have talked about the negative version of had better not, which also again gives a strong advice or a mild threat. Again, this belongs to the present family. You had better not miss your exam. This is a strong advice from me, for example. He had better not come here or I will shout at him. This is a threat, but we don't necessarily need otherwise or else, but you can also come across these prepositions a lot. They had better send us the invitations or else I won't speak to them again. You can see that this is also a threat. She had better not be late for her university exam. This is a strong advice. By the way, if you have noticed, after modal verbs, modals 1, if I want to use be form, I use it just like be. We don't put am, is, or are. Now we have obligations. We're going to examine 3 main modals with these category, in this category. And the first one is must. Must, as all the other obligation modals, represents something that has need to be done. And the difference of must is that it represents internal obligations. This is the biggest and only difference between must and the others. Again, the use of our modal verb in the sentence is the same. You can also use this as a strong advice, a very strong advice. Let's write some examples. I must improve myself and get my dream job. So what you see here in this sentence is that this is an obligation that I made up for myself. It comes from me, and also the receiver of this obligation is me. She must see a doctor immediately I think she's having a seizure. So here you can see that this is a pretty strong advice. What I can do is to do an order. Must is stronger than had better, and had better is stronger than should. Should is equal with ought to. Then we have to, which also expresses obligation. But this one, we are talking about external obligation or rules. And it differs from other models when it comes to the grammatic structure. Because with subjects, IUV day, we use have to, and then verb 1. After he, she, its objects, we use has to and verb 1. She has to wake up early every morning. So you can see that this is not something that she decides, but it's what she has to do. I have to wear uniform at school. It differs according to the subjects. She has to be home at 11. For example, it can be a rule set by her parents. We have to hand our project to the manager till end of the week. You can see that this is an obligation. He has to go 7 miles every day to get to work. And last but not least, we have need to, which can represent needs or obligations. For example, you need to be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. We need to go to, for example, Italy for the conference. Also, similar with have to, again, it differs from subject to subject. With he, she, it, we use needs. He needs to get his back checked by a doctor. It can be something serious. So we are talking about obligations or needs. Now, let's look at obligation modal verbs from the beginning. We have talked about must, which is actually internal obligation, or we can use must to give strong advice. I must improve myself and get my dream job. You can understand from here is that it's an internal obligation, a rule or an aim that I set for myself. Here, she must see a doctor immediately. I think she's having a seizure. In this one, you can see a really strong advice. And when it comes to advice models, must is the strongest. Then had better comes, and then should and ought to are equal. Then we talked about have to, which is external obligation or rules. But it differs from others when it comes to the grammatic or sentence structure. With I, you, we, they, we use have to. Verb 1, with he, she, its subjects, we use has to, verb 1. She has to wake up early every morning. This is not something she decided for herself, but it comes from outside. I have to wear uniform at school. Again, this is a rule set by the school. She has to be home at 11. Maybe this is a rule that her parents told her. We have to hand our project to the manager till end of the week. He has to go 7 miles every day to get to work. Then we talked about need to. We can represent our needs or, again, obligations. But when it comes to obligation, it is same with have to. It comes from outside. And, again, our grammatic structure changes depending on the subject of the sentence. If we're using he, she, it, then you need to get an S. He needs to get his back checked by a doctor. It can be something serious. We're talking about a need in this example. You need to be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. This one, you can sense that this is an obligation from outside. We need to go to Italy for the conference. Again, an obligation that is coming from outside. Now we have the negative forms of these obligation modal verbs. We're going to talk about them. But first, let's talk about actually prohibition, which consists of mustn't and can't. This actually can be tricky for students because people think that don't have to, don't need to, or needn't also give the meaning of prohibition, but actually no. Only can't and mustn't give us the meaning of prohibition in present. This is important. For example, you can't smoke here. Or I could use the same sentence using mustn't. You mustn't smoke here. Or she can't speak loud in the library. I could also use mustn't instead of can't, and it would still give the same meaning. We're not done with modals yet, but we will continue on our next lesson. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you understood and enjoyed our lesson. As I have said, we will continue with modals on our next lesson. Take care of yourselves.